I want to welcome everybody to this special episode of Underbroadcasted. Our mission is to help you go from unknown to known through thought leadership. Yeah. I made it up as I went along through thought leadership and content creation. My guest today, Peter Winick, literally wrote the book on thought leadership. The Thought Leadership Handbook is coming out July 21st, so a couple weeks from recording, and it'll already be out everywhere. Peter, I am super excited to have you on the show. We're going to get into a lot. Let's start with, tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So first, I co-wrote the book. This was not a one-man show. So I co-wrote it with Bill Sherman and Naren Ariel. So a little bit about me. Let's see. Founder and CEO at Thought Leadership Leverage, co-host of the podcast, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership, and now co-author of the Thought Leadership Handbook. So there's a theme there. I don't know. You get an extra prize if you can figure out what the theme is, but it's kind of all thought leadership all the time in various formats. So that is me.
And I love it. And, I like to start from the beginning. So thought leadership, what is it? What does it mean? What does it mean in today's world, especially?
Yeah, there's a lot there. So I'll tell you what it is by telling you what it's not, right? So it has become, so I've been doing this a long time I've been in this space for over 20 years. And now of late, it's become fairly sexy and popular and all that sort of stuff, which is great. I love that. But there's a lot of things that it's not. So a lot of people confuse content marketing, for example, with thought leadership. Content marketing is great. Content marketing serves a purpose. Content marketing works when it's applied appropriately, but thought leadership, it's not, right? So content marketing to me is, okay, if I were selling diapers and I've had some content to show new moms how to avoid diaper rash, that would be really practical and really good to them and maybe increase their loyalty to the brand. Thought leadership, that ain't. Right. So to me, thought leadership comes in a variety of formats. It could be based on observation. It could be based on research. It could be based on synthesizing ideas that you've got. It can be based on being a practitioner in the marketplace. There's a lot of places that it can come from. But so there is no one place that it needs to come from or must come from.
Got it. Yeah. So that's where it comes from. So give us a little bit of a more sense of the content marketing versus thought leadership. Like, what is the use of insights there? What's the extraction? Yeah.
Content marketing by definition has a job, and the job is to market the product or the service or the offering. Thought leadership, there's a bunch of use cases. Like, why am I doing this? Why is somebody devoting themselves to thought leadership? It could be they're passionate about an idea. It could be that's how they make a living, right? They develop great things and great thoughts and great thought leadership, and they get paid to put that out in a variety of ways. It could be at the organizational side. It's an effective way for high-tech financial services, professional services, et cetera, to put ideas out in the universe, to differentiate them from the competition, to stand out from in a crowded marketplace, to show the world, this is who we are, this is what we believe in, this is what we think. So it's not a direct monetization, but there are indirect financial benefits there. So that's how I would be thinking about that.
Yeah, and I like that. How are you seeing it change now with the world of AI? Like, let's just jump into that real quick.
Yeah,
and I think that's...
so it wouldn't be an interview. We didn't put AI in there a few times, so I'm glad we're getting it out of the way early. So I think it changes everything and it changes nothing, right?
Yeah.
So it changes nothing from the standpoint of, high quality thought leadership needs to be developed, you need to put the work in, right? AI, to me, the way I think about AI as it relates to thought leadership is, as a thought leader, how might I integrate this tool into my business, system, process, et cetera, suck some cost out. But as a thought leader, how might it help me research? How might it help me make my stuff better? How might it help me port my ideas into other formats and modalities? It is not the creator, even though we're living in the agentic age, of high quality thought leadership. And anybody attempting to do that, you can fool some of the people some of the time, right? That's just not going to work. And I think what we're seeing now is a lot of sloppy, not thoughtful stuff put out under that, whatever. The stuff that we're seeing, to me, we're not seeing. It's invisible, right? So, some of my clients that are amazing keynote speakers are using AI, for an example, to say, hey, I am giving the keynote that I typically give, but next week I'm doing it in Miami to a group of aeronautical engineers. Can you give me some stories or some suggestions on how to how to get my ideas to resonate better with that audience? The following week, I'm delivering it to a group of, high school superintendents or whatever. So that's interesting. Or, give me some data that backs up the ideas that I'm making up. So to me, think about it as, having 10 grad students at your disposal for free all the time, not, ooh, how can it do all the heavy lifting on the research and the creating and all that? You still have to direct it. You still have to do it. So that's my 2 cents on that. And I think people are too often, from an AI standpoint, they're very black and white. Oh no, AI is bad. Well, that's a stupid statement. It's just stupid, right? I'll never use it. That's also a stupid statement. Like, I wouldn't want to go to one of the top trusted advisors, professionals that I use, be that my accountant, be that my attorney, be that a doctor. And the first thing they say to you is, I'm proud to not use AI. I'd be like, okay, well, then you stopped learning. Then you're an idiot, right? Like, my lawyer graduated law school 30 years ago and said, and I've never had a new thought relative to the law or learned anything new since then. I'd be like, peace out. Like, let me go find another lawyer, right?
Yeah. That's the same way that I look at it. I mean, AI is a tool and it supercharges. And it all comes down to the experience that you're bringing to the table. And I like what you were saying about connecting the dots. One of the things that was talked about in the book was demonstrated insights versus traditional credentials, right? So being able to come in with your own stories, with your own experience to connect the dots to say, hey, this is what I've seen and here's the data to prove it, versus just writing something that sounds smart.
Yeah, I think that's, well, I'll give you a real life example. It was partly how we wrote the book. So one of the ways the book came to be is we have developed, Bill Sherman and I, a bunch of models, methods, and frameworks. That's why this book is framed as a handbook, right? It's the tools that we've developed in 20 years in the field with clients. Now, nobody would read that. That would read like an IKEA instruction manual, right? Like, hey, here's a model and here's another model and here's, like whatever. And then, somehow at the end of the process, you'd have 7 extra pieces and the table is wobbly. Like, we don't want to do that, right? So then we needed to get stories and we need to get ideas and we need to get things that validate and bring to life the models and methods and frameworks, because that's how humans want information. We don't want to just read a schema or something. So the way that we did that is we went through our podcast library. And at the time when we started this process, we had 650 episodes in the can. Now we've got 700 and something, 725. And it was 2.3 million words. 2.3 million words. To put that in context, a typical business book is 50,000 words. So technically that's a lot of books, right? So we're like, all right, how do you extract information from this? This is where our AI came in. So we would take our models and methods and frameworks. Like, so for example, we have 5 avatars that we've created, different types of thought leader. And we'd say, give me an example of an in-house expert that published their first book and started to do more keynote speaking and the trials and challenges they had with that process. And it was like, boom, here's 12 examples. Now, we did all those interviews, but I'm lucky if I remember where my car keys are, let alone a vignette from a conversation I had 6 years ago, right? So then we'd go back to the tapes or whatever and look in that and go, that's really cool. You know what? I'm going to call that thought leader back because I have 3 follow-up questions in a different context. So it really got us to third base, right? And that for us was, I don't know how else we would have done it without funding a bunch of interns and a lot of beer and pizza for them.
Yeah, because usually when authors are going to start writing a book, they hire researchers to go and start doing research and making the connections and doing all this. This is something that I feel like is starting to catch on. You've been in this much longer than I have, so maybe you could tell me, maybe I'm just so new that I'm discovering it, thinking that it's new. The use of podcasts and filming interviews is a way to look back on your experiences, your stories, other people's experience to help to write thought leadership is something I'm seeing more and more out there.
Well, I would change that slightly. So you and I are both now investing a half hour, an hour of our time into this conversation. And we're creating an asset. right? Now, it might be a good asset, a bad asset, a valuable asset, and not valuable asset. That's to be seen. My instinct is there'll be some value here, right? Well, once we do it, the value isn't just that this will get published and some people will listen to the podcast, whatever. There are vignettes that we could take out of that. We could create nuggets from this. We could say, that thing that we talked about here, that's really interesting. I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to do a post on LinkedIn on that tomorrow. I'm going to do here. So I think it's just another canvas that thought leaders can use. So for example, I don't fancy myself a writer, right? No, I wrote a book. I co-authored a book. This is an easier platform for me. I'm a talker.
Yeah.
Right. So great. So how do you take the thing that I'm comfortable with and use that as an input to create other things? That's how I look.
And then, you talked about some of the frameworks. So I want to double click on the content that you're creating from that. I remember one of the things that you have a lot in the book is about the impact equation,
Yes.
the types of content, how to approach. Let's get into some of that because we're still speaking in abstract, we're producing thought leadership, we're producing content. So people don't know.
So far, and it's really anecdata, people dig the impact equation. So Bill and I came up with that because we were trying to show, you want to have a formula. Now, this is not an equation like E equal MC squared. This is more of a way to think about something as opposed to put the input in, hit next, and you get a number. It's not that. This is not your BMI, right? But the impact equation is this. It's idea simplicity times the audience relevance times the personal or system velocity times the velocity that you get multiplied by the audience share. That gives you your total impact. Now, I'm not a math ace, but what I do remember from third grade is if you multiply anything by 0, it equals 0. Therefore, if your idea isn't simple, if it's not relevant to your audience, if it has no velocity, and you have no audience share, one of those variables, you crapped out. So the question becomes, where this becomes a useful tool, because it's just a tool, right, is to say, okay, let me look at my body of work, where I am and what I need to go. Now, some people, the issue might be, when I asked you about your idea, you started to talk and all I heard was the voice of the Peanuts for 4 minutes. So if somebody to ask me after our conversation, hey, what are his ideas? I'm like, I have no idea what that guy's talking about. Now, that could be, I'm an idiot. It could be you're not expressing it as simply as possible or some combination thereof. So simplicity is one. There are others where they don't have any velocity of the idea, right? It's brilliant. I read things that are stuck on people's hard drive for years, but how come nobody else has seen this? Well, there's no velocity. And then on the velocity, there's a personal velocity. Like I'm right now at this moment doing a lot of podcasts getting ready for the book to be launched, right? That's dependent on me. If I'm talking to you, I can't be talking to somebody else right now, right? So that's limited to the personal velocity of me recording this podcast. However, there's a system velocity built in because then you're going to now post this to your audience, right? I don't need to be there when one of thousands or hundreds or tens of thousands of people listen to it. That's system velocity. So it's that 1-2 punch to get it out there. And I think one of the big ahas from the impact equation is this connection between the audience relevance and the audience share. So I know, and it helps me sleep better at night, that I am totally irrelevant to 99.99% of the world, and maybe even another 9 out of that. Doesn't mean I'm bad. That's just a fact, right? There aren't a lot of people in the universe of 9 billion some odd planet saying, oh my God, I'm a thought leader and I need to talk to Peter and his team because they're really good. So that 0.001 is what keeps me up late at night thinking, how do I sharpen my tools? How do I make myself more relevant to them? How do I find them? How do I react to them? How do I connect with them on a deeper level, right? And I think many people think that their actual audience is far bigger than it is in reality, right? So I'm not Coca-Cola where everybody could use it, or toilet paper or something universal. I'm just not that. I'll never be that. And that's cool because now I could just find out this is a great podcast for me to be on because your audience looks like the people I want to get in front of. So that to me is like getting, there's a numerator piece and a denominator piece. So that's the impact equation.
Yeah. And I like the way that you put it in the book. You guys were talking about if you think that your audience is everybody, then it's actually nobody.
Correct.
Right. And it goes back to what you were saying, multiply it by 0. Well, it's the same thing. If you think that your audience is 9 billion people, I don't know, we could get nerdy here and say Stack Overflow and it's going to zero out, right?
Yeah.
You just have no share.
And it's also indicative that you haven't done the work to figure out, really 9 billion people. So there's a 3-year-old in Ethiopia that needs what you got right now. And they're going to benefit from that. You know, there's a 94-year-old in Uganda. Like it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And I think, you know, one thing that's important, because I've been tripped up with this and had to go through my own learning journey as well. When you say haven't done the work, this isn't a point in time, one and done.
Right.
Oh, I did the work and I got my audience. Like that is going to change and shift over time, right?
I would say yes. And so at first, the audience you think is yours might not be yours. You've got to find, and by audience, I mean the community that supports you, right? So there's a difference between the like button and the buy button. I'm talking about the buy button, right? Because lots of people might like you. You're fun, you're personable, you're interesting, whatever. What you need to be focused on, who are the folks that can become clients, can connect me to clients, just as you know, putting on your CEO hat. It doesn't mean that if others benefit from what you do, that's all fine and dandy, but you don't have infinite resources to put out great stuff to a population that can't support you. And if your community can't support you, then you need to either figure out how they can or find another community. It's really that simple.
Yeah, which then brings us into the distinction that you were making of the different types of thought leaders, the hobbyist, the practitioner, and the business operator, which really, I really like the way that you put all of that together. So let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, and so first off, it doesn't mean that you have to go from one to the other to the other. You could, but you don't. So there's 3 phases or 3 types that we see. One is a hobbyist, right? Most people don't go to school. You know, you don't ask most 6-year-olds for Halloween, what are you dressed as? And they say a thought leader. Like they're, like that's, they're walking around with a podium and a microphone saying, I'm going to be a keynote speaker. Typically it doesn't happen, right? So for many, it starts off as a hobby. Hey, this is here's my day job or here's my profession. And then I'm really curious about this other thing. So I'm going to do some research. I'm going to do this and whatever. And then maybe someone invites me to speak, but it's not how I identify in terms of how I make a living or what I do or who I am. But then the hobbyist says, like, I wonder if this could be this is a thing. Like, I didn't even know I could be doing that. So they might move into either consciously or not to the practitioner. So a practice, lots of folks have a practice. Your doctor has a practice. Your lawyer has a practice. Your, dentist has a practice. It's ultimately time for money, and you need to be in the room or in the Zoom to do what you're doing. Period, full stop. And it's not that that's a bad thing. You can make a lot of money in certain practices, right? But it's a limiting thing in terms of scale and impact. So a lot of people come to us and they have a practice, right? They're getting paid to coach. They're getting paid to be an advisor, a consultant, a keynote speaker, things of that nature, workshop facilitator. There's things that they do that fall under the practice. They're writers, authors, contributors in magazines, whatever. The business owner now says, wait a minute, hold on. I've created, or I would like to create, or I'm going to create all these assets. And my job as the CEO, now I'm putting the CEO hat on, is to make sure that these assets produce a return and produce a dividend. And it's not a dependency of, is Peter in the room or in the Zoom, right? So moving from a practice to a business is where a lot of thought leaders want to go. It doesn't mean they stop doing what they're doing. They stop the speaking or the advising or the coaching or the consultant. They still do it, but you're wrapping other layers on top of it that aren't dependent on them. And guess what? From an exit standpoint, nobody's buying anybody's keynote business. It would be the stupidest business in the world for anybody to buy, right? Like, now you could look at it. Maybe there's some dopey investment banker that would say, but wait, he's doing $1.5 million at a 95% margin. We should put private equity money in there. Like, yes, but the role of Taylor Swift tonight won't be played by Peter. You're not going to have a happy audience, right? Like, that's going to happen more, right? So that's really the key, is to say, wait a minute, it's not about you. And oftentimes for thought leaders, it is about them. It starts about them, something unique about their life, their perspective, their history, their accomplishments, and it's all about them. And then it's got to not be about them, because then it's about codifying the ideas into different modalities that are scalable and more broad reaching. That's when you've got a business.
Yeah, and I think that that's worth going into. And I'd love to hear some more about your journeys. And I know there's some stories in the book about this as well, but a lot of people get stuck at that. That's kind of the next plateau after I don't know where to get started. And now you got started, and now you're giving talks, and now you're AJ,
Yeah.
who I, played with content years ago as a hobbyist and then sold some projects and it was
Yeah.
great. And then I couldn't unwind myself from the thought leader to
Yeah.
the business. A lot of people get stuck. What was your journey like for that? And what do you see with other people going through that? Like, how do they break themselves apart?
Well, my journey is a little bit different in that still largely a practice. So there's lots of things I do. I've got a podcast and we wrote the book and whatever, but ultimately, the way we make our money is it's a consulting firm. Now that's changing. I also have, courses on LinkedIn and license some of my stuff, whatever. So we've been moving over the last couple of years, the business to be not a practice, but layering on things that are more scalable. Right. So,
yeah.
And then there are other people that say, I'm fine being in practice mode. Like that's, so I think it really depends. What are your goals intrinsically, extrinsically, exit wise, et cetera. And even, if we're thinking about it, not just financial, but impact, right? If I'm limited to, let's say I'm a keynote speaker and I'm a good keynote speaker and I do 40 gigs a year. Okay, well, let's just do a little back of the envelope there. Let's say the average keynote has 300 people in the audience. Times 40 is what? 12,000? My math is right?
12,000. Yeah.
That's not a lot of people for a lot of airline flights and all that, if your goal is impact. Now, you might say, well, but I'm making 60 grand a keynote, so, boo-hoo, first world problem. Okay, well, maybe you are. But if you want to have impact, then the question is, at the end of the year, how do I get 1 million people exposed to my ideas? Right? Well, I have to put it in a bunch of different formats and modalities with various price points and various distribution partners and strategic partners, whether it's, things like LinkedIn Learning courses or assessment tools, or going back to AI. Everybody's using a lot of these agentic AI derivatives of thought leaders. There's lots of cool and amazing ways to get your ideas out there and touch more people. So the question is, what are your metrics? Do you want to, is it about, I want to go from, X dollars a year to 10X? Do I want to go from touching X people a year to 10X? Those are subjective. There's no right or wrong answer to those, but is your strategy aligned to meeting those goals?
Okay, I really like that because first it gave people permission to be in the place that they want to be. And I think we don't hear a lot of that or enough of that. Like you could be a hobbyist and just share your knowledge. I always had that complaint when I lived in San Francisco. Oh, I have an idea. How's it going to be a unicorn?
Yeah. Right. There's only two ideas. Right. Either stupid ideas or billion-dollar ideas. They only come in two flavors. But that's a very San Francisco vibe. Right.
Yeah. So it's nice to be a little bit, but then, you also talked about the sabbatical test, right? Yeah. And I think people have to be very clear about what they're signing up for if they are that thought leader who is a practice operator, right?
Yeah.
Can't go on a sabbatical.
We've seen, right after 9/11, travel stopped. If you're a keynote speaker, guess what? 300 people aren't showing up in your living room to give you money to speak tonight. Like, game over. 2008, very similar. Remember this thing called COVID? Like, remember that? If you made your living...
I was there.
Yeah, that was fun. Masks and all that sort of stuff and, drinking bleach and whatever. Like, okay, if you were a keynote speaker, it was a nightmare, right? But people came out of that. It was forced creativity. So the first thing that thought leaders did during COVID, and I call it the COVID Renaissance, is you gave a bunch of really, really smart people time that they didn't anticipate. So what did they do? They had their sketchbook, all these ideas and all this stuff. And so they wrote another book or did another thing or whatever. Very, very few of them said, oh, now's a good time for me to optimize my marketing or find the right distribution partners. They did, I don't say they did the wrong thing, but what was really needed wasn't necessarily how they filled that space of time.
Got it. Yeah. And I like you just mentioned distribution partners because yet another thing that you were mentioning was ecosystem thinking and partners. Yeah. Right. Because I think a lot of people getting started, they see this mountain of the content, the operations, the marketing, the here.
Yeah. So
they're like, I can't do it all.
Well, and that's right. So, well, first of all, some do think they can do it all, and that's silly in its own right. But I think the piece is to have an understanding of what are all the things that need to be done in order for me to achieve my objectives as a thought leader. Got to have great content, right? I have to have a well-defined audience. I've got to have the right product mix. I got to be able to get those products, offerings, and services cost effectively to the market. So I got to have a sales, marketing, distribution function, whatever. So you got to map all those out, and then the next thing you got to do and say, geez, which of these am I anywhere from, inept at to really competent at? Which of these things do I like? Which do I hate? Who's out there that's as good as or better than me at these? And how do you put the puzzles together, right? So if if you don't have the distribution side, great. Most of us don't. Find distribution partners, right? If you don't have the marketing savvy side or the social media savvy side or the fill in the blank, okay. Well, you could choose to develop those skills if that's something that you'd like to do, or you can find someone that does it and does it well, cost effectively. So that's really the issue. Nobody's great at everything.
Mm-hmm. I feel like growing up, I was told a lot by, teachers in school. It's like, oh, you have to find the things that you're weak at and work on them to improve it. And only much, much later did I start to learn that, no, you do the things that you're really good at and you hire out the rest, because you have to learn and develop. I'm not saying don't learn and develop, but it's like, you can't be good at everything and you have to be honest about that.
Yeah. And that's kind of the hypothesis of strength finders, right? So if you're not good at math, it doesn't mean that you get a pass, right? If you're a CEO and you just don't enjoy accounts receivable, it's not like anybody's going to say, well, don't worry about that. Like everything else is fine. You'll be bankrupt, right? So the question is, okay, AR or accounts payable or a function that this business needs to do well, how's that going to happen? Okay, well, there's 20 answers to that question. They don't all need to be, and AJ's going to be doing collection calls if that's not something you should be doing. So I think that's right. I think it's being honest about what you enjoy, what you're good at, etc. And there might be a time for many of us where we've got to do things that we're just okay at because we don't have the resources to do it all.
Sure.
But realize what are the things that you don't want to spend your time doing, and would anybody but you hire you to do that? That to me is always a litmus test when I talk to clients and say, oh, but I do my social media. I'm like, okay, are you good at it? Nah, I'm kind of all right. Do you like it? No, it's really tedious. Okay. Would anybody else hire you to do that? They're like, hell no. I'm like, but you would hire you. Do you see the problem here? Yeah. How many hours is it taking? What would it cost you to outsource it? Like, you're lucky to be doing a C+ job. Like maybe we should spend a few dollars and get someone that's all they do all day, every day.
Yeah. It'd be much faster. We treat our time that we're losing as free, right? Okay. So I'm going to do it myself so I don't have to pay somebody else. And then it's like, well, you just lost the time you could have been working on something else.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's bring it around, because one of the things we've set the bar really high of the things that you should be thinking about as you get into your thought leadership journey: your audience, your messaging, the offerings, distribution, partnerships. What is the balance here between how much you should define up front versus get started, because you're going to figure more stuff out as you go?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I reserve to use the consultant's get out of jail free card, which is, it depends.
It depends.
Right? Yeah. So we're gonna pull and by the way, we're looking for sponsorship I think Depends would be a great sponsor. So anyway, that's a side. If anybody's from Depends, give me a call. So I think that it depends on where you are, right? So if you don't have a well-defined platform, if you don't have well-defined ideas, if you don't so there's a lot of ifs here. Right? If you don't have that, then you got to start there, right? If you've got the goods from a thought leadership perspective, you've got really good IP and really good thought leadership, then you could start elsewhere. So I don't think there's one correct answer to that question. It depends on where your starting point is and where you'd like to go and what the market expectation is.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen it on both sides. Like you also see this with business plans, right? People will throw all of their time into building this multi-page, huge, complex business plan instead of testing the market and talking to customers.
Yeah.
Or it's like, there's a mix.
For us, our starting point with almost every client, like 95%, is in the development of the strategy, right? Because in the absence of a strategy, which is where most people are as thought leaders, why? And we can get into that. They don't have outside investors. They don't value their time properly, whatever. You know, they don't know where to place their bets, right? They don't have clarity. So therefore, they're confusing activity with productivity. They're not lazy. They're passionate. They're doing stuff, but they're doing the right things in the right sequence to get to a set of outcomes that they're trying to get to. Now, it doesn't mean that's written in stone, right? Strategies are dynamic or whatever, but you have a starting point, right? Like if you and I were going to say, hey, let's take a road trip, jump in the car, and we're going to say, where are we going? You want to go to Vegas or you want to go to Miami? Oh, well, we have to have a destination. How do we want to get there? The scenic route or the fast route? Like, oh, like, do we have food? Do we there's some basic things we're going to do. Now, along the way, we might say, oh, on the way to Miami, we realized like South Carolina is kind of cool. Why don't we spend a couple of days here? Okay, let's pivot. Let's do that. Or the car broke down and now we need to that wasn't on the plan, but I guess we need to get that repaired. So I think you have to have a strategy. You have to have directionally where you're going, things you're going to do. And more importantly, and I think this is a bigger piece for the thought leaders, what are you going to say no to? Because it's so easy to say, oh my God, yes, and everything's important, right? Everything can't be, you know, when you do the classic, you know, green, yellow, red with folks, you know, we do that all the time with clients early on, and they come back and everything's green. And we're like, okay, you kind of missed the point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's also hard to turn stuff down, right? I think that, you know, part of maybe the intrinsic purpose people tend to get into thought leadership is that they like to be rewarded for being smart in their experience. Like that plays a part in it. Saying no cuts off some of that reward sometimes.
Yeah, it could. And it's also when your strategy is an unknown, it's easy to make the case of, yeah, that kind of makes sense, right? You're not going to do anything stupid. You're not going to do anything totally off brand. You're not going to do anything unethical. But people ask you, hey, do you want to like collaborate on this article with me? Yeah, it sounds good. Hey, do you want to do this podcast? Hey, and it all like, you can kind of justify like, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. And someone like me might try to do it, which is not an answer. It's like, yes, I'm choosing to invest an hour or whatever it is into doing this. And why am I doing it? I think what we don't do well is document the assumptions that we make when we make decisions. And it helps you to do that. So the reason I invested a lot in social media was I thought it was going to get me A, B, C, and D. Okay, well, let's revisit that and see if that holds true. So like when we launched our podcast 8.5 years ago, I was really clear that I thought it would be fun. I thought it would be interesting. I thought I would learn, right? But ultimately, when I put my CEO hat on, I'm like, all right, we're going to invest X dollars in this over the next several months and put out, I think the number was 50 episodes to test it because you can't test with 5. And if it doesn't start yielding us what we think, which is net new clients, then we're going to stop doing it. Like it's that easy. It's like any other marketing campaign. Like if direct mail works, you do direct mail. Like, so we did it. And we realized like, this is really a fun, incredibly cost-effective way, powerful and productive way to get new clients, to build the brand, to meet new and there were all these other benefits on top of it, but the math had to work. Like if we're going to spend X dollars and don't get a return on those dollars are going to be moved to places that give it a higher yield. Yeah, absolutely. So as we're coming to the end of this, I would love to hear, what are some of the things that surprised you as you were authoring, co-authoring, writing the book, getting all of the interviews done? Like, was there anything that turned what you thought was a truth on its head? Oh, yeah, there were several. So there are 2 projects I've taken on in my life where I've failed miserably in terms of time, money, budget, whatever. One was a major home renovation, right? Like, oh, I thought this would take X and cost Y, ha, ha, ha. Yep. Right? And then the second was the book. And what's ironic is I've seen dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of people do the same. It's not the same thing. It's different. It's a different journey for everybody, but it takes longer, right? You know, there are these companies out there. We could write a book for you in 24 hours. Really? $600 ghostwrite. Yeah. Like really? You could. Would you put your name to that? Like, so there's that. So the unknown for us was to extract what we needed to from the transcripts of the podcast to give us some insight, right? And then to get it out there and to get it out there right. and to get it out there well. And so we never went through the, oh my God, we're throwing that whole manuscript in the garbage. We went through several iterations where it's like, these 2 chapters are really one chapter, and like, is that story really adding to it? And like, this is like, there was a lot of that, but it takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort. I think what hasn't changed, or maybe hasn't changed yet, is my expectation on the other side. Now, this might sound stupid, but at some level, I don't care how many books I sell. Like, this is about getting the ideas out into the world, and I'm not falling into the trap of, this needs to sell 100,000 books and it's going to be the next good to great. I don't really care. And again, go back to the impact equation. My market just isn't that big, right? So what I care about is it's going to open new doors, which it already has. It's going to bring us new clients, which it already has. It's going to bring thought leadership to the top of the conversation to people that it hasn't, right? So those are real good things. And I don't need to put in all the energy I've got around a launch, because the book has, no pun intended, probably a 5 to 8 year shelf life. It's evergreen. It's a model and methodology and framework book with stories. Will those change or need to be updated down the road? Yeah, I imagine so. Will we have new tools? Yeah, but it's not like I'm writing about, the soccer games going on now, or the midterms elections coming up, or something where it's like, well, nobody wants to read about the 2023 Super Bowl in 2027 or something. Like, it's not going to become dated quickly, and that's by design. So, I've got 6-8 years or whatever to extract value from this asset, and it is an asset we built, and that's what I intend to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I agree. I mean, a lot of the information is very durable, right? The tools are going to change, and that's fine. Tools change, but the underlying philosophy, the underlying principles, a lot of that's still going to remain, right? Maybe the velocity side is going to change with AI coming out and just enabling people to do
but the principle of velocity would be the same. I could see double.
The principle will be the same.
Yeah. And I think like right now what's interesting is I feel like I get sent a lot of books to me from PR agencies and stuff to look at and all that. And it seems like, my guess, 20-30%, there's an AI something in there. And I look at some of them and say, oh, like Charlene Lee just did a great book on AI, but it's principle based, right? There are others out there, and it's like, okay, that's a magazine article. That's 300 pages, and I can just tell, and I put them in a special pile. Like, you're going to look back on those in 2 or 3 years, they're going to be a joke. It's like when you watch the movie Wall Street and Michael Douglas has the cell phone that's like 3 times the size of your head, and you're like, oh yeah, that was the 80s, man. Yeah. You just look at that, it's automatically dated. Now, it doesn't mean it's not a great movie and it wasn't a great story and greed is good and all this other stuff, but like when you tie it to something, a technology or a moment in time or whatever, those things date quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. All right. How do people get in touch with you? Where do they find the book?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is to wire large amounts of funds to my account. So you could email me for the ACH. So that will always get my attention. Second to that, if you're going to settle for something second best, I don't know why you would. My email is peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. You can get me on LinkedIn, which is Peter Winick. And then the website is thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And, if you're interested in being a podcast guest, if you're interested in learning more, if you're interested in buying, you can buy the book anywhere, Amazon or the thoughtleadershiphandbook.com. There are places you can buy the book. So that's where you can get me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We're probably going to have you back on to unpack some of the ideas, because there was so much in this.
Sure.
I think we only got to page like 50 of the book. So we got a lot more to talk about.
So we'll make it a read. It'll be a series, right?
There you go. That'll be for the ASML or ASMR. Right. We'll just read through the chapters and go page by page.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks so much, Peter. This has been...